let's talk about protest. You guys been to them, you heard of them, you've seen them, you've talked about them. You're probably wondering, Michael, what is a protest? You've probably been embarrassed to ask. You probably have wanted to know for a really long time, and now you're 57 years old, and you're like, I don't know what a protest is. Let's talk about No King's Day. We'll talk about it a little bit now. We're going to talk about it more during happy hour with our guest. So there was a No King's Day protest on Saturday here in America. It was a protest like against everything, and there have been a lot of responses. And some of these are public, some of these are probably just you having these conversations with your friends. But, to some people, this is an amazing opportunity to participate with those in our community to create collective enthusiasm, to gather together and know that there's a lot of people that are feeling really terrible about what's happening in America right now, and they want to create something new. And some of that ties into anti-fascism and anti-capitalism and anti-genocide and all that sort of stuff. Others might just be like, oh, it's like some more performative liberal nonsense. It's not going to lead to anything. I think I understand where both sides of that are coming from. And so saying that right now, like, I'm interested in thinking about it through both of those lenses. So let's look at, this is just a sort of overview the NPR had about it. One of the biggest days of protest against the Trump administration's policy happened in cities around America. There was 2,600 No Kings events planned across every state. 5 million people. That picture looks AI, but I guess it is real. I was energized by a slew of actions taken by the administration since summer protest. So here's a recap of how they unfolded. United in protest to protect America. Protesters showed up to oppose a wide range of issues. They're saying no kings, no tyrants. Hey, there's a Palestine flag in the middle of that one, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, some people are there to protect America. Bernie Sanders, an independent who caucuses with Democrats, addressed posters in D.C., and he talked about oligarchs because that's his thing right now. Immigrants are welcome here. We got a lot of that sort of vibe. The Trump administration weighed in, and this is pretty funny. The Trump administration and Mike Johnson and all these sorts of peoples made it about how it was like a hate America protest, and it was a sort of hate America, Marxist, radical, left wing, Black Lives Matter, white genocide protest or whatever. That was all the sort of Washington discussion was going to be the most dangerous and scary day ever. And it had a lot of theater kid energy. It seemed fun. If you guys were at these protests, let us know what it was like for you. But yeah, so Mike Johnson tried to say it was a hate America rally. When an NPR reporter asked about the protest, White House spokeswoman Abigail Jackson said, "Who cares?" Trump went to Mar-a-Lago. Connecticut House Republican leader Vincent Candelora said that the message of protest is divisive. It's funny to say that that's divisive when this weekend Trump shared an AI video of him dropping shit on people. I think our democracy is strong, but they're free to express themselves. The vibe, peaceful protests with song and dance. There was a lot of talk about it was going to be all dangerous and scary, but it seems like it wasn't. It seems like it wasn't. There was Hamilton. There was dancing. There was, it was just like good vibes. So that's the overall the vibe here. There's protests. They happened all around America. A lot of people went. People seem to have a good time, and they largely seem to agree that shit is not good and that they wish shit was better. And people enjoyed being in an environment where other people were like, hey, I too think that shit is bad and I would like shit to be better. Pretty uncomplicated stuff right here. Now there's different ways that people have interpreted. So let's look at this article. This is in Current Affairs, a publication that I sometimes enjoy. I sometimes don't like as much, but that's okay. Not everything is about me. Like I don't have to like everything. You don't have to like everything. That's okay. Not everything's about us. The internet tries to convince us that everything's about us. And like, if we don't like it, we have to, it's just like, who cares, Like, I don't like mayonnaise, but put mayonnaise on your sandwich. See if I fucking care. More of a mustard guy, especially spicy mustard. This is from John Ross and Nathan Robinson. It says, no King's protest are just not enough. These are worthwhile events, and leftists shouldn't shun them. I agree with that. But stopping Trump requires building power. Protests aren't coupled with organizing. The right will win. And let's just say a little bit here about this mindset. I think that a lot of people can view what's happening right now in protests like this with a justified skepticism. Here's why I say it is justified, because a lot of protest activity, I'm going to use the framework here of what I think is going to end up being my favorite book that I read this year, Anna Kornblau's Immediacy. In the book, and I've talked about this on a stream in a couple of videos, Kornblau discusses how a culture of immediacy leads to a view of protest where it's like politics is, I see the online event, I sign up, I do the thing, I participate in the thing, I make content at the thing, I'm home, back to whatever. And of course, I know many of you probably who are watching this participate in things like this and also do a lot of organizing in your communities. And I'm not trying to undercut that at all. But I think for a lot of people, that can be the frame through which we think, maybe even through which we unconsciously make sense of things like protest. And that's not an individual problem. That's a systemic problem and a way that we've been taught to look at the world. But that can lead some leftists to say, hey, like, what's next, right? Like, what is this for? What are we gathering together to do? What is the next thing? What is the next step? Because, you could say, if we're going to analyze this through terms of like immediate political efficacy, are those protests, are those 5 million people going to slow down ICE raids? Probably not. Are they going to slow down the destruction of the White House as they build the new wing, which is crazy, but who cares? Like, burn the whole House down. I don't care. It's not going to immediately stop any of that stuff. It's just not. And there was already a No Kings protest. And it's also weird that some of these protests ask you to sign up and put your information in a database. It's also a little weird. I say that as we get into this. So Ross and Robinson, write this article here. Let me make it take up as much of the screen as possible because we love words. Most streamers do stupid stuff like play videos. This one, we just put words on a screen and talk about it. And if that's what you're into, that's why I love you. It says they both went to the local No Kings protest here in New Orleans on Saturday. New Orleans! And were heartened by it. It's pleasant to be around people who care enough to take a stand against authoritarianism. Again, thus far, I like this take because they're just acknowledging that there's like effectively good things about this, affectively, even if they're not as useful effectively. It's a reminder that Trump's worst outrages, including his cruel ICE raids and his militarization of the cities, are not popular. These protests buoy the spirit in a dark time, which is important. That's important. I think that's what gets left out in some of the criticisms, that the buoying of the spirit, the creation of collective enthusiasm, the reminding people that there is a power and strength in numbers and community, all of this matters. It's not all just like individual strategy. It's about having something collective. A spirit of fun and frivolity prevailed. And I think that's important too. Like, I think that even performatively, there's something interesting about having a spirit of fun and frivolity to an event that's just sort of like shaped or sort of advertised or talked about like it's going to be, a radical leftist junta. A popular sign had a picture of a butterfly and was captioned, "The only orange monarch we want." I love butterflies. There's people in animal costumes. A lot of the slogans in New Orleans had nice flavors. That's a cool outfit. New Orleans is a great town, by the way. The attendance was staggering, 10,000 participants. It dwarfed the largest protest that Current Affairs had covered before in New Orleans. A diverse crowd packed the Lafitte, I don't know how to say stuff in New Orleans, Greenway. The first No Kings rally took place on June 14th, coinciding with Donald Trump's 79th birthday. At the rally in New York, supporters of Zohran Mamdani and Brad Ladner used the event as a platform for distributing Don't Rake Cuomo literature. That's cool. But in other ways, the event was dispiriting. With a comparative lack of interest or attention to the Gaza genocide that was raging at the moment, the prevailing message looked more like this: Taco Trump. And, part of it too, I know in one of the events, at least around here, on one of the online signups, it was like, remember, be respectful of the police officers. And there was, elements of Zionist propaganda at some of these sorts of things, which, feels bad. And of course, I think these protests and the No Kings thing in general, I think it creates space for DSA chapters to go together, and it also creates space for, like, you know, pretty centrist folks to jump in. Some activists and commentators on the left have characterized No Kings as a cringy carnival of liberalism. Chris Smalls, founder of the Amazon Labor Union, asked, No King's Day is a big ass parade, but when are we going to withhold our labor for, I don't know, maybe genocide? Butch Ware, Jill Stein's former running mate and current Green Party candidate in California's gubernatorial race, observed that mass mobilization without any specific demand and without any organization is actually detrimental because it wastes potential energy that could be directed into effectively organizing against systems. I'm going to read this again. I think this is one of those quotes where, like, a part of my brain exists that hopefully that, like, locks in on this, but then another part of my brain sees why this is maybe not the best take. Mass mobilization without any specific demand and without any organization is actually detrimental. Detrimental is probably where I would have a quibble, because it wastes potential energy that can be directed into effectively organizing against systems. Sure, but it's like, it's not like there was, this kind of presupposes that everyone woke up on Saturday with all of this political energy and they were going to put it into effectively organizing against systems, but instead they wore blow up dinosaur costumes into the cha-cha slide at City Hall. And I'm not sure if that was the either or. Max Blumenthal, editor-in-chief of the Gray Zone, points out that No King's messaging does not include opposition to U.S.-Israel wars, despite officially referencing Ukraine. Yeah, that's shitty. That's stupid. It's understandable why people feel cynical. Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi personally endorsed No Kings. Pelosi posted a video of herself ripping up a paper crown, echoing her theatrical tear-up of Trump's State of the Union speech in 2020. Yeah, like, these people are just fucking millionaires doing this shit performatively because they don't like the cultural aesthetics of the modern movement. These are just people who like the vibes to be more Hamilton adjacent. Cory Booker and Adam Schiff showed us what democracy looks like. Kamala Harris's husband unironically posted a picture of himself holding a sign that said, if Kamala had won, we'd be at brunch. The fact that people are still doing the brunch sign is nuts. I don't know why I became Vinny from Long Island right there, but it's true. The brunch sign is nuts. Undoubtedly, many of the attendees would indeed be at brunch if Kamala had won. I'm going to tell you a secret right now. I'm planning to do something in December. It's like a stream where I'm going to also try to do a push to get people to sign up for Patreon, because I'm going to drop some new stuff there. And one of the ideas was to do a thing where I stream for so many hours, but then for every signups, I keep going. Maybe we'll have a thing where if, like, enough people sign up, or if we get enough donations, there can be like an hour where I have to do the stream in a regional accent, and then people get to vote for what it is. That's all. That's an idea I have. I have ideas all the time. This thing's constantly moving. Yeah, Emhoff works for an administration that cut a deal with the Trump administration. I mean, it's not like shocking that, oh, there's our boy. Hey, we'd be at brunch. I'm sure you were anyways. While No King's protests successfully make Republicans look foolish and provide a valuable demonstration of the scale of opposition to Trump, they are unmoored from a political program and exemplify the worrying Democratic tendency to build an entire platform around opposing Trump. And I do think this is crucial because, you know, for a lot of us, Vinny the Tomato Burns, yes, that should be a character. Chimchurri is trying to get me canceled. But, like, here's the thing. People who are mad about a lot of the Trump stuff, they are mad at the systemic effects of capitalism. They are mad at a legacy of colonization. They are mad that they're living under a world where police and military forces protect the interest of capital, not the interest of people. They are mad that they live in a nation state that supports apartheid genocidal projects abroad and has somehow folded those projects' ideology into the fabric of our own nation. They're mad at all of these things, but we focus on the immediate effective thing of, like, Trump and the stuff he's doing today, and they're mad at that. But they're pissed about a bunch of other stuff too. And I think one of the points coming up here is, like, what does it mean, or how is it possible to use events like this to better articulate the underlying conditions that are really making people's lives shitty and making them so upset? You know, how can we do something? Because we remember, like, 15, 20 years ago, or maybe was it like 2008, we had the whole Tea Party thing where people dressed like goofs and were just like, the Constitution, Abraham Lincoln, old-timey stuff, white power. And the Tea Party people got co-opted by the whatever the MAGA thing was then, because the MAGA thing had like a narrative, not a true narrative, not a good narrative, but a narrative that basically said like the system in power now is causing all the things and all the stuff you don't like. We're going to fix it. Here's how. Join up with us and we'll be good to go. And so much of the narrative around the Democratic Party is Trump bad, Trump bad, Trump bad, such that people who offered anything else were considered to be like distracting from the real issue. Because the thing is, you all know this, is that it's not like when Trump leaves office or gets by God or something like that, that all of the ideologies and systems and structures enabling this are going to go away. You know, spoiler alert, big spoiler alert. There's seemingly no greater vision or demand underlying the protest beyond getting rid of the man who would be king. You know, there's some echoes of the Occupy movement here. Other protest movements had coherent demands such as votes for women, no blood for oil, or ceasefire now, but no king seemed for many just to be a way of blowing off steam, of expressing frustration at our inability to halt the rightward slide of American politics, which I do think there's still a level of importance to that thing. Chim Cherise says in the chat, and I think this is in relation to the Tea Party stuff, it wasn't co-opted, it evolved. And anyone who's saying fire shit in the chat, I'm not trying to miss you, miss what you're saying. I'm just kind of jumping back and forth. So apologies about that. What's up, Maz Love? Let's see. Also, I don't like brunch. And yet, for all its performative liberalism, Republicans in the Trump administration treated no kings as if it were a looming act of domestic terrorism. Mike Johnson said the protesters are the terrorist wing of the Democratic Party and hate America. Yeah, all that stuff was really dumb. Pam Bondi said the protests were Antifa. You're seeing people with thousands of signs that all match. Someone is funding it. We're going to get to the root of Antifa. So for these people, is Antifa people in black masks that throw fire bombs, or is Antifa, you know, like librarians with cute signs? Like which one is it? I feel like it can't be both. Let's see. Yeah, Trump did his national security directive, blah, blah, blah. For all its flaws, we on the left shouldn't be so dismissive of those who attend events like No Kings. And I do agree with this. I think that I'm a broken record on this, right? What am I going to say about everything all the time forever? If someone wants to predict this in the chat, you can. But we cannot get distracted by focusing on the individuals and miss the systemic cause, which also means that I get why it could be fun to sometimes roast people for doing like lib protesting or whatever. But if you have 5 million people in this country that are getting up and not going to brunch and making signs and marching and getting caught up in political enthusiasm, that's, I mean, what percentage? I'm not good at math, but take a tiny fraction of that 5 million people that might want to connect some more dots, that might want to more critically understand and engage with the systems that are causing all this. And then a fraction of those people who might want to organize, who might be enthusiastic to support candidates or run for office or join political organizations or community age groups. You know, I think that's something. I think that's something, you know? Someone now in their head is just like, Burns has become such a fucking lib. These rallies represent a contingent of voters who are genuinely alarmed by the political direction of the country and searching for ways to resist it. Even though the rallies were peaceful, the Trump administration has begun treating these protesters as enemy of the state. Nor was the protest just full of centrist liberals. In New Orleans, there was a visible presence of communist, socialists, and pro-Palestinian activists. And there is something like large scale, guys, that there's going to have to be some fucking like overlap between, you know, overlap. That looks like I'm just jerking. Okay. But there needs to be some sort of overlap in how we're thinking through this stuff and thinking through the like commingling of organizations. There was, and this is in New Orleans, tables for Palestine advocacy, Democratic Socialist America, Jewish Voices for Peace, Party for Socialism and Liberation, Freedom Road Socialist Organization, Palestinian Youth Movement. Yeah, so people were using those organizations. Jewish Voices for Peace handed out hundreds of flyers promoting the Break the Bonds campaign. Organizers of the pro-Palestine tables had mostly positive experiences in their conversations. No Kings is not a revolutionary event, nor does it pretend. It's important too. Like when you read the organizational literature about the thing, they weren't trying to do the revolution Saturday. You know, like they did what they were supposed to be doing. So I think, sorry, well, how much is left in this? These boys are writing. Performative resistance alone won't change anything unless it is coupled with sustained organizing. Events like No Kings will remain an empty spectacle. That's quickly forgotten, but he's making the point. Sorry, Tellis wrote this, but they're making the point that it still creates a space for organizing and getting together. Nathan brings up that in Sarasota, Florida, there was a contingent down there who was really going for it. The end of the article says so people can demonstrate all they like, but the right still controls the government. The right thinks in terms of raw power. If we show up, hold signs, and give speeches, the question they will ask themselves in response is, does the protest alter our ability to get away with this? If it doesn't affect their capacity for action, they're just going to keep going. And I think this is really important. We saw this in the years of protest against the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. There is a read on protest by the powerful by which, as long as the protest creates an outlet for the masses to express their anger, distrust, and resentment, as long as they can express that without doing anything, then hell yeah, guys, protest all you want. There's the anecdote that Slavoj Žižek often uses about how, the protests against the Iraq war, like Tony Blair and George Bush were both like, this is what we're fighting for. We're fighting for the people of Iraq's ability to do this same sort of thing. The question is like, what does a protest look like that fundamentally threatens or upsets power as it currently exists? And I do think, at least in my lifetime, the closest I've seen us get to this was during some of the 2020 protest and some of the stuff years before that too. I mean, a lot of the protests is in protest in response to, police killing of Black people in America. It felt like there was some protest where the system did get a little bit scared. It was the first time in my lifetime. I mean, the first thing I think of is I think it was in 2014 or 15, the protests in Baltimore after the police killed Freddie Gray there. There was like lockdowns in the city and you couldn't go out after certain times. Like there was a serious effort to like really squash this. We saw the same thing with Mike Brown in the St. Louis area. And of course in Minnesota and nationally after George Floyd. So we've seen examples of protests that do seem to lead to the state getting scary. The hard thing, of course, is like the scarier it is, the more they're going to respond. But there has to be something happening. There has to be some articulable demand that is holding the system and power's feet to the fire. And I think that's, these things are not good as ends in themselves. Will a mass protest like No King's Day magically change the system that we live in a radical way? Probably not. But is there the possibility to channel that enthusiasm and energy and community into something else? There absolutely is. The question is then, like, what are those things? Is it an existing candidate? Is it an existing organization? Do we need a bigger, broader organization or candidate? I don't know the answer to these things, but I know there are, whatever percentage of those 5 million people who participated in those protests, a big chunk of them are looking for someone or something or some set of values and ideas that both help them make sense of what's happening and give them a sense or give them a plan to respond to that. Because I do think the overwhelming feeling, and we've seen this articulated in different ways, is like, how is this happening? This doesn't make sense. This isn't right. This isn't normal. Surely they can't do this. They're doing it. They're doing it. They're doing it. He tore down part of the White House. The White House? I care about the White House. Why do you care about the White House? Well, I've never been to the White House. You're not allowed to go to the White House. Well, I could do a tour, but you're not allowed to go in any other room than that. So why do you care so much? You rent your apartment. You can barely afford that, but still the White House. It's a system, a symbol of democracy, blah, blah. Like people want to understand and feel like there's a level of connection between themselves and the event. And I know at times in my life, it's been participating in events, seeing protest happening, and those events naming the thing, articulating the thing. And I think what we saw a lot around some of the bigger Black Lives Matter protests was a relatively clear articulation of how violence and marginalization and oppression against Black people and the abuse of the police state were tied up into an economic and political system. People were sort of like drawing connections. But what happened when people started drawing the connections? It's like, well, Gusher stands with Black Lives too, and like Burger King definitely thinks Black Lives Matter. Don't get us wrong. Honda Days this year. We want to get all y'all fellas. Did I say that right? We want to get all the homies into a new accord. You know what I mean? Like quickly, there becomes language that gets used to like disarticulate or dearticulate that which is helping us understand the system. If we were going to use, Frederick Jameson's terms here, we're talking about cognitive mapping. For anyone who is a paid patron, by the way, we're getting back on the reading group grind this week. It's been a busy couple of weeks for me with travel, but we're getting back on it. And then we'll also be kind of ramping things up later this year if you want to go check it out. And just a reminder as well, if you do sign up for the free Patreon, you'll always know when I'm streaming and doing shit. So there we go. Oh, the homie Mez is in San Francisco. In San Francisco, it looks like National Guard is getting sent here next. And I'm really angry. Yeah. I mean, again, like, and why are the National Guard going to come to San Francisco? Also, I mean, I saw it. Mez can confirm this. I was there. I spent a weekend in San Francisco, and it was like, I know it's like a city. Like any city has unhoused people, and every city has stuff that maybe like isn't the best, and every city has some level of crime or whatever it might be. But what a lovely place. Like my takeaway from spending 48 hours in San Francisco wasn't like, get the National Guard here now. It was like maybe too many Waymos. Maybe there's too many Waymos. So unless the National Guard are going to take those out. But why is San Francisco potentially going to get invaded by the National Guard? Because Mark Benioff, a super rich person that runs Salesforce, said so. And sort of the interest of capital came under attack, right? And so much of what, this is a little bit of a side rant, so much of what the right has done effectively recently is disconnected their cultural and identity concerns from being connected to systems of capital, such that capital has been free to kind of do what it wants, while all this anger is focused on like cultural institutions and ideas and systems, like where people are still talking about like DEI and critical theory and woke Marxist Antifa, like all these things. Many of these things mean nothing, or they've just become something totally different. But they're like these empty signifiers that distract from pointing to systems that are real. And in many ways, the Democrats have spent years doing something very similar, talking about, whether it's like the language of inclusivity or understanding or opportunity, more empty signifiers. And these signifiers distract from pointing to the economic and social conditions at the root of all this sort of stuff. There's the famous line, and this is in my head because it's in the next video that's coming out. The next video is going to be fun. I saw the first cut today. It's on how we've all lost our minds since 2020 and why I think that is. I think it's going to be a good one. But there's a clip where Hillary Clinton was like, if we put all the Wall Street bankers in jail today, we shut down the banks, would that end racism? No. And it's one of those things where it's like, sure, Hillary, sure, Hill Dog. But no one is actually saying that. No one is actually saying that. So I don't know. I didn't have a place to land this plane. I was flying and I didn't have a place to land this plane. And now here we are.